And we're live. Hi everyone. So this is Nicole. I first met Nicole when we opened this gym, wasn't it? And I was looking for coaches at the time to come on and teach weightlifting and I think yoga as well. It was yoga too. Yeah. And I asked Chris Edmondson, and he put forward your name, recommended you highly. So that was pretty much a done deal for me. If Chris could recommend you, then you must be okay. And then we got chatting, we got talking, then we came down, viewed the place, and talked about ideas and so on. And you seem like a really, interesting person, and had the same kind of coaching philosophies that we did, same kind of coaching background as well, and education and so on. So it was kind of perfect fit. But as time went on, I didn't really know much about your history or the condition or anything else. I didn't realize that you had to overcome a whole lot more than everybody else, pretty much. And that's why I've asked. One of the reasons why I've asked Sean. But I thought it'd be interesting. I thought you're quite an inspirational person, because I didn't realize how much you had to get through to be able to keep doing the stuff you're doing and still train and still have all these pursuits, which you seem to have a lot of, which we'll get into. So yeah, without further ado, anyway, do you want to introduce yourself and talk a little bit about your background? We'll talk about your education and so on.
Yeah, my background's really mixed. I just have a lot of interests, really. So when I left school, I didn't have GCSEs or A levels, and for a couple of different reasons. And I really just liked being active. I liked being on the go. I was really into my dancing, and I started doing teacher training for that very early on after I left school. And then from there, I kind of drifted through different career paths, but all within activity. So it started with outdoor education, then went into fitness, then back to outdoors, then to fitness. And there was a bit of travel in there as well, which gave me a lot of experience of meeting different people. And then I went back to uni at 25, did my undergraduate degree and then my master's, and now I'm teaching undergraduates, which is weird. I'm hopefully going to go on and do my PhD very soon in physical activity, looking more at climbing, hopefully. I'm just trying to tie up the details of how I'm going to approach that scientifically, really, at the moment. Yeah, I think that's...
So where are you teaching at the minute? Is it Blackpool?
Yeah, I teach at Blackpool and the Fylde College at their university campus. So yeah.
Cool. And what subjects, what range are you teaching? Are you teaching one specific topic, or is there a whole range?
No, so I teach degree programs, sports coaching and performance science, and then physical activity, health and nutrition, which is a separate one. Sorry, it's a mouthful. But yeah, I teach 16 modules across those, and then do like project support and academic skills.
Cool. Yeah, that's a lot. How are you finding that?
Yeah, I really enjoy it. It's tough. It's challenging. Yeah, it's I get a lot of imposter syndrome, but yeah, I really enjoy
it. I think we all do a little bit of that. That's good. How did you get into that? I mean, you came from, well, in fact, if you'd like, go right back to the start and kind of begin in your work experience, because from the brief conversations we've had, your work experience has been pretty insane.
I think the first one that was really kind of geared me down this path is I worked at an outdoor centre in the Lake District. But that came about because I went and did a Prince's Trust course, if you've ever heard of them.
Oh yeah, I have, yeah.
So they tend to go on it in areas that are deprived, which the area I live in is around Blackpool. And it's for people that are either unemployed or out of education or didn't get their GCSEs. So I was working in a bar and a hotel, but I wasn't sure where I wanted to go. I just knew I'd do that still. And we went on a residential trip with the course as like team bonding and Duke of Edinburgh type thing. And they offered me a job when I was there. So I ended up then working that summer as an outdoor instructor, and I loved it. but I ended up merging into fitness because they had a well-being camp on site that was children that were 20 stone and above from America that had been sent over by the parents to sort their lives out with professionals, and I ended up working a little bit with them, and it kind of led
Cool.
me down rather than outdoors. So that's kind of where it started.
So you did all that even before your formal education then?
Yeah, that was when I was
That's cool.
18, and yeah.
That must have been a great thing to come into formal education with. You know,
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, it was. I still to this day I say it was my favorite job. I absolutely loved it. The people that I met are friends for life, and the experience was very diverse in who we worked with, from children right up to corporate, team building coming over, and being outdoors all the time. Who wouldn't love it? So yeah, it was really good.
how you know, you're saying it's your favorite job. What kind of then moved you away from that, or was it a natural progression, or what happened?
It kind of naturally, it's a temporary job anyway, and when the contract finished, I had the choice of renewing, but if I renewed, I would have had to have given up dancing, which at the time dancing was everything to me,
Mhm.
um, because of the cost that's involved. So when I worked in the lakes, I got the train back every weekend to do dance lessons and continue my teacher training and stuff. So yeah, I wasn't ready to give it up at that point. So.
Crazy. And what kind of dance was it? I didn't even know dance was such a massive. I think you did mention it before, but
Yeah, ballroom and Latin. I was a weird kid. I really loved it from a very
that's
young age.
cool. I recently got some dance lessons myself on Latin, and I tell you that must have been funny to see. I tell you, wouldn't have minded getting that recorded just for a laugh. But yeah, it's hard. It's not easy. Definitely not easy.
Go back and do that.
What are you still doing dance now? Do you still do it?
No, I took a break when I was at uni, and that's the point where I stopped because it just got too much for my body to cope with studying, doing my other training that I'd started to fall in love with as well, and do dancing and climbing. It was like some things just had to take a back seat while I focused on that. So
Yeah, yeah. You kind of almost pulling yourself in too many different directions.
yeah. I just like a lot of things.
Yeah, it's good though. I feel like we're kind of always told to be getting ourselves into a specific thing early on. Like even in school, you're kind of pushed down a certain path. If you're good at science, do that. If you're good at art, do that. If you're good at English, do that. Whatever it is, you're kind of pushed right away, and they don't really leave much room for exploration. I think we specialize much too young, and we don't. I mean, even at 20 or 25, you still don't really know what you want. Like I know loads of people who only really start their stuff at 25. What
Yeah,
time did you start your uni? 25?
yeah. I never thought I'd go to uni to be honest, but it was a lot of my bigger decisions are done on a whim, and that was done on a whim. I contacted Chris, went the back door way to ask about it, and I just sent a message, and it's quite funny thinking about it now because I was like, I'm thinking of doing this course. Am I too old? And that was my first question. Um, and then he was like, well, I think the more important thing is why do you want to do the course? What do you want to get from it? And then we had a few phone calls and he started to realise that my background would suit the course really well.
Mm-hmm. And how, if you, did you say you left school? What did you GCSEs or
No, I didn't have any.
you didn't have any? How then did you manage to get on the course in the first place? Because I think that's probably good for people to hear. Because a lot of people come out of school without GCSEs or without the qualifications. They think their life's over at that point, and it's not.
Yeah, I was devastated. I was on track for A stars through high school, so it was a real like blow
Oh,
to
okay.
not be. It wasn't because I couldn't do them either. It was because there was just a lot of bullying at our school.
Right.
It was rife in that year for some reason. There was a lot of us that were hit quite hard with it. So I just stopped going. I stayed off for 9 months before the school noticed that I wasn't there. And there's a few of us that did that actually, all just stayed in our homes and hid from our parents, and then came out with nothing. But I just got really determined to try and find other ways to study outside of a classroom where I was comfortable, and then get to where I wanted to be. So I did like the level 2 and 3 qualifications. I did the Prince's Trust that got some the English and maths that I needed. And then because of the accumulation of vocational quals, that was essentially in the experience behind.
It's brilliant. Like, it's really cool because I know that actually my partner Ash, she's the same. She uh, missed a lot of her GCSEs and stuff. She didn't get her GCSEs as such either, and it was
Yeah.
the same kind of thing. Bullying in her school. There was a lot of it at the time. So she left school with an equal. She's got a degree in psychology now, you know. So it didn't stop her either. Moving on. I think it's good though because, um, as I say, I was a little shit really when I was a kid. I managed to get my GCSEs from A levels. I don't know how I did, but I very easily could have been one of them who, didn't follow through with that stuff, and then probably felt a bit kind of hopeless or like there's no kind of way back from it. And schools are kind of very quick to tell students that it's going to set you up for the rest of your life, and what you do now matters most. And it's not always, well, it's not really true at all. Like you can change your life any day you
Yeah.
want to. But yeah, so not to discourage kids from doing well on their exams, do your exams. But so what you did all that vocational work. I mean, were you working there for years? That the job in the lakes, or
No, I was only there for 1 season, and then I moved back home, looked for another job, and ended up going back to a different part of the lakes. And I was working in hotels and bars, and then volunteering at local gyms because at that point I just decided to start the qualifications, which at the time took a lot longer than they do now. So
yeah,
each one took,
right.
and you had to get some experience behind you. Yeah, and then I went traveling, did volunteering while I was overseas, at gyms, at dance schools, tried to keep up with it as much as possible. I ended up living in a house full of rugby coaches, which was really cool because it got my interest in sport, and helped with the Rugby World Cup, which was really cool again because they needed volunteers.
Really?
Yeah, and then when I came back, I found I didn't like staying in one place for too long. So I worked in a gym, a YMCA, did GP referral for a while, but found after about a year or so of doing that, I was getting really itchy feet. I just wasn't happy in the area that I was in. I wanted to try and have other experiences again. And I applied for a job on a whim again and ended up being flown out to Greece a week later and ended up doing work there as well. And then that was what I did right up until uni. So,
And what were you doing in Greece? Did you say?
fitness. Yeah, fitness, sports, coaching, and yeah, all that kind of stuff.
That's cool. Jeez, if I'd have thought that, I would have been traveling myself when I was younger. And what? So after you've had that experience, when you came to uni, then was it a big change, or what made you want to do uni, for example? I know you said it was a one thing. How did you know Chris? How did you know to get in touch with him? How did all that come about?
I didn't. I'd in my head, I'd always thought when I was younger that I'd go to university, and then when those hopes were kind of dashed in a way, I didn't bother. But then when I was doing a season, there was a guy that came up to me and he was doing his PhD, he was doing research in physical activity and the impacts that it has on public health. And we got chatting, he was one of the guests there, and he asked if I would be part of his case studies for it. And then I took part in his research when I came home for the winter. And he had quite a frank discussion with me, because I sort of told him what my interests were, who I liked helping, and the fact that I was really interested in how the human body moves, why we do the movements we do, not just a simple explanation, but getting down to the nitty gritty. And he encouraged me to go to uni and give it a try. So I looked around, looked for the ones that I was interested in, and it then found Chris via the website on UConn, and thought if I'm going to do anything, I need to contact these people and actually see if they'll take me on first, rather than actually applying, getting rejected, or applying and getting accepted and not liking it. I need to know what it's going to be about first.
Mhm. Mhm. What's kind of interesting in all that is you're with you, you know, talking about getting bullied at school and so on, and that been such a factor that you stayed at home. It doesn't seem to have knocked your confidence at all. If anything, your confidence seems to be, you know, I, I mean, I wouldn't even have had the confidence myself to email a lecturer and ask if I could do the course. So I find that really interesting. That is, you know, the impact of bullying. I think it's probably misunderstood quite a lot.
Yeah, it's a weird one. It has had an effect.
Right.
I'm very I'm trying to think of the way to explain it. So anyone that's close to me, friends and family, they see the big impact it's had. They're very
Okay.
protective now of me because of what they've seen over the years. And they can see how it impacts me generally. So if I'm out on the street, I am not the person to walk around with my head held high. I'd be the one with my headphones in, looking down at the ground, hoping to just blend in and be ignored. But when I'm working, it kind of changes. It's almost like an alter ego. It's the best way. I try to explain this to my students because they get very nervous, and I still get nervous every time I teach. But whether it's teaching a yoga class, whether it's doing weightlifting, whether it's just doing a simple one-to-one exercise session, or being in a classroom, every single time I get anxious and nervous, and I'm pacing. And having this interview today, even then I was like, okay, so what do I need? I need to make sure I'm on time. And yeah, it's just it does have a knock-on effect, but I've tried to use it as a motivator, as a kind of screw you, I'm gonna do all right. Don't care what you've done to me now, I can get there. So
Yeah, no, that's brilliant. It's really good to hear. Like, I think probably it's a good message for a lot of kids out there who may have been in the same position you were in then. You know, to know that it's by no means is that going to determine the rest of your life. It's not always going to be like that. You won't always be around shitheads. You know, it's
hopefully.
true, you know, it's true though. I mean, obviously you always have some idiots in life, but you get better at coping with them as well. You know, as you grow up, you get better at dealing with people. You understand other people's motivations more. You know, you
Yeah.
grow up, don't you? Uh, so talk more. I mean, you mentioned yoga and weightlifting. How did those interests start? What happened there?
um Yoga, I've always very mildly, I say in the like lazy way, I'd incorporate the stretches to help with my dancing because I'm not a flexible person, and ballroom Latin doesn't require it too much, but it does help to
Mhm.
make me easier and flow better. But when I was working in Greece, we had to teach yoga every day. So I did a short course um, whilst I was there. So some of it was online and some of it I had to send videos. And I didn't feel like I knew enough or felt confident with teaching it, even though we'd had training and all that. So I spoke to my boss there and they persuaded me to go to India and try doing the training there because I'd get to be completely immersed and switch
Yeah,
off my brain because I always have projects on the go. So they just said like go out there, switch off, you can focus, make sure that you're taking all you can. Um, so I did. I found a yoga school out there that I liked. Spoke to my employer. They paid for a certain amount of it as well, which was pretty cool. And then I think there was a few other girls as well that joined us from that company to do theirs.
brilliant. What was
Yeah,
that experience like? Share more of that. The
yeah, it was really good. Um, I loved India. I never wanted to go to India, so that was a really great experience to go and see it, and I would definitely go back. Um, but there was a lot of people finding themselves, which is why I had the smirk. Yeah, those words were used quite a lot. And for me, I was just there to learn from my job, and I like the philosophy behind it. I like the history, and the spiritual side doesn't bother me. I'll take part in the meditations and the chanting and things like that. But I was also raised in a very Catholic household, and I spent years of kind of getting away from spirituality a, as a whole, really, and just kind of
Mhm.
like realizing that you don't have to be all into something to actually appreciate it.
Yeah.
Which, yeah.
What? So when you say finding themselves, I mean, what did they even mean by that? What does that even mean?
I don't know. I feel awful. I don't want to sound. I get people go to travel to really gain the confidence to explore new things, see new places, get out of the comfort zone. So in that respect, I completely get it. But I think that when you pin so much hope on, you know, finding out who you are on one experience, I think it comes in time.
Yeah, yeah, that's a
It
very
was
good point, actually.
over time, and it's lots of experiences that mold you into who you are, as well
Yeah,
as your upbringing, as other things that you're exposed to. So yeah.
yeah. There's not one kind of transformational experience, is there? It's accumulation of everything.
Yeah, and I'd say like you've just said, the bullying impacted me in a way, and that's, that has not made me a different person though. It's just maybe affected how I approach things a little bit more. So I have a little bit more determination in certain aspects of my life. Outside of work, I'm the laziest person going, but inside work, I'll do it simply. So it's just, yeah.
Cool. And the weightlifting, how did the weightlifting come about?
That was very mixed. I grew up with parents that did bodybuilding and powerlifting when I was younger. So I always found the gym to be a comfortable place, and it was quite normal for someone to go to the gym all the time. And then I did, don't judge me, but I tried bodybuilding very badly.
Nothing wrong with that. Nothing wrong with it.
I just wanted a challenge, but then it took me away from dancing, and it also started to impact my climbing, which was a hobby I'd picked
Yeah,
up from the actor. And for me, I was like, this is not going to work. I can't do the things I love very well. It's making me worse. Um, and so I started to look into ways to make it effective for sport. And then I tried Olympic lifting. I was pants at it, but I enjoyed the challenge. And then when we got to uni, there was obviously quite a bit of the focus on Olympic lifting as a sport itself,
hmm
um, and as an assistant for sports in general. So I started to develop it from there, and then yeah, got really into it.
it's interesting. I think a lot of people, because I had a bit of a similar experience now with the mixed martial arts I did when I was younger. I did a bodybuilding course. Was one I designed myself. I was learning at the time. I was doing my sports science thing, and they were showing us bodybuilding style programs. And so I made one up for myself and did it, and it worked. It was really effective. I put on a lot of muscle, but I'd been out of the MMA gym for 8 weeks or so, and I'd gone back, and I felt completely slow and sluggish and horrible, and it had a huge negative impact on that. And then I went off the weights altogether because for me that was just a negative impact.
Yeah.
And then I met my physio much later on. Physio I used to go to, just to get everything ironed out. Obviously, we were training about 6 hours a day at the time, so a lot of aches and pains. And he was telling me about this Olympic lifting and how it can make you explosive and all this. And then that's when I got into it too. And I started looking at CrossFit at the time, and CrossFit came out too. I remember seeing that and think, oh, that looks badass. Like that's not going to make you slow and sluggish. It's going to make you an animal. So I started getting into that then too. So you keep mentioning climbing, and that's a big passion. When did the climbing start? And
At the really, when I
back at the start. What age were you then? Were you 17,
was
18? 18.
18, I'd done climbing when I was younger with school, and whenever we went on activity holidays, because I used to sign myself up for all of them, it was always the kayaking and canoeing. I like to be on the water.
Mm-hmm.
So when I went to the outdoor centre, that was my area where I really thrived. And climbing was very new, but I had to still take children up to the crag, and I had to still put them on the climbing wall that was indoors and outdoors. So I was terrified of heights. I say was, I still am. And my friends that are there very slyly decided to tie me off whenever I started to panic. And it was, you're not coming down, you've got to go up to get down. So deal with it. Um, and it seems to work. If you're unsympathetic to me when I'm whinging or panicking, then it's fine. I just crack on with it. So, whereas if they had said, "Oh, it's all right, come back down," I've never approached it again. And now I love it. I just find it as an
There was a problem with the audio there for some reason. It went a bit crazy. I don't know what happened there. Just say that last bit again. Sorry.
Which bit? Sorry, from.
Just the bit where your friends clipped you on and.
Oh yeah. So
Just go from there.
they went out on a climbing weekend when we were all off, and decided, because I kept panicking and I wasn't as into it as them, they decided to tie me off, so I couldn't move. Essentially, the only way I could go was, and that was their attitude as well. You've got to go up to come down, and it was quite evil at the time, but I really appreciate them for it. And I still climb with those guys now as well. We go and have climbing holidays together or meetups, as well, and they're from everywhere around the country. So yeah, it's just become a really big hobby of mine now, because it
That's
takes your
really
mind off.
cool. It's cool in a number of ways. Obviously, it was a great way for you to make friends and stuff. And I think when you have like a similar interest like that, you really do bond well, don't you, over it? Um, the other thing that the whole like tying you up and making you go up thing, it's crazy because like in our online group just this week, they were complaining about kind of not being motivated and all this, and I was trying to gently encourage everyone back to training, and they end up I just lost my patience. I thought these fucking lazy bastards need to crack on. So I did a live into the thing and started calling people out, and I was tagging people and saying you're a lazy fucker, bit a bit more abusive, let's say, and it worked. They're all they all come on and says sorry to you. We're going to start doing it now, and then next thing you know, they're texting me, showing me videos of them training, and they just need a kick in the arse. And some people do just need a kick in the arse sometimes. I think we can be a bit too soft sometimes in our approach to motivation, let's say.
Definitely, I have sometimes been too soft with people. Like, I can't train my friends because I either just end up laughing with them too much, or laughing at them, or I'm too soft with them. So for me, like the clients that I have, I'm quite sarcastic. I think obviously working in areas that are just usually male dominated, there's always that sort of banter, if you will.
Yeah.
For me, like my clients, I regularly, when they're being lazy, I'll rip them for it. I'll take the rip, so to speak, and mock them a little bit, or just put on a silly picture and be like, "This is you, so get off your ass."
Yeah, it's good though. I think like we did a lot of that here at this gym, as you know, a lot of piss takes and a lot of laughs. But I think that's part of it. I mean, people really enjoy the banter and the crack. Like they don't.
Yeah.
That's half the reason they come, I guess, isn't it?
Yeah, it's supposed to.
Yeah. That's cool. So how did uni go then? What? I'm kind of trying to work through a timeline, I guess. What? How was uni? What you did strength and conditioning, was it? Undergrad?
Yeah. Uni was great. I loved it. It wasn't a typical uni experience for me. I kind of went in, did the studying, and went home. I wasn't there to party like other people are with that uni experience, and I think from being a mature student, and I was going through, I was quite ill at the time and didn't really know what was going on with myself. So for me, it was a case of just getting through each assessment, pretty much. But I loved it, really, really loved it. Found it very interesting, and think it was a really good program. Yeah.
Yeah, seemed it anyway. I didn't do that one, but Chris Wright talks highly of it, and Ryan and Bobby. Um, what you mentioned an illness there. Do you want to kind of, I don't know, elaborate on that, I guess? Because this is the bit that I didn't find out. So I found out you've done all this amazing stuff, traveling and working in all these different jobs and tons of experience. And then I found out after all that, I thought, how the fuck did you do that? So I guess you want to elaborate on that, or?
Yeah. So I found out another condition. I have two conditions. One's called endometriosis, and I now have pelvic congestion syndrome. They're both things that, endometriosis is a disease that only women can get, but there isn't a cure. And the pelvic congestion syndrome, men can get it as well, but I have it to an extent that can't be cured or fixed or helped, really. I just have to manage it day to day. I had pain every day since being a teenager and had no clue why. But I have a mother that's quite unsympathetic, so she's amazing. But if I would whine that I was in pain, it was like, oh, get a grip. If I was telling her that I had pain, she was like, all women have pain. And without oversharing too much, it's affected by your hormones, so it gets more painful during a woman's cycle.
Mm-hmm.
But as time went on, I started to realise that wasn't normal. I broke my ankle, and then had a dance exam the next day and still did it, and didn't realise that my ankle was broken. And the doctor couldn't believe it, and I just said, oh well, it's not really that painful. And a few years later I broke my scapula windsurfing because I'm clumsy. And again, I didn't know it was broken for about, I think it's about three months or so, until I couldn't turn my head. And they did an x-ray and realised I'd cracked it right the way across, and a new break had started to form because I'd carried on teaching classes every day. And it was only then when I said it, I was like, oh, I just thought it was a niggle. I just thought I was a bit tight in my shoulders. I started to realise actually that pain that I had, that dull ache from the breaks, was absolutely nothing compared to the pain I was having on a daily basis. And it went from being maybe once a month to a few times a month to every single day. There was just no break, and it would spike and get worse in the mornings, and just before I went to bed. So I'd have like almost an easier part of the day in the middle of the day when I was working. But I was just a lot of the time just like trying not to cry, because I was like, I'm just weak. Yeah, and then it was only when the shoulder injury happened, and I was starting to struggle with movements I normally didn't struggle with either, that I basically went back to the doctors, and we had to threaten to sue because I'd been passing out as well at this point from the pain, because I'd passed out and fallen in the water in Greece. I'd passed out and hit my head on tiles when I was over there, and stuff like that. That's really risky. So I was just like, how many times can this happen before,
Mm-hmm.
take this seriously? And they sent me to a specialist, said it'd be nothing, just pain, deal with it. And it came back that I had this disease, and it was all over my reproductive organs, around my bowel. So that was that.
And I mean, you don't have to go into any more detail really than that. That was fine. But if you don't mind, what does it do? What's the mechanisms behind it? Because I've never even experienced it or come across it myself.
Okay, it's quite a hard one to explain. There's not enough research on it, so there's still a lot that's unknown, and some of
Mm-hmm.
it's a theory. But essentially, when we have a lot of estrogen in our systems as women, this disease forms basically the lining of your womb, and that layer happens somewhere else and forms somewhere else in your body. I'm not very good at wording this really, because it baffles me. But essentially, your body creates these cysts and clots around your body, in places that they shouldn't be. So, and then when it comes a time for a woman's cycle, your body's trying to shed. So it ends up like a webbing that sticks to the organs it's around, and sticks to the tissue that's around, and just pulls and twists because it's trying to get rid of it, but there's nowhere for it to go. And that's probably the easiest way to explain it. But
Jeez.
I'm not a medical expert, and no matter how much reading I do about it, because there's conflicting information and there's still a lot that they don't really know, and doctors don't seem to know much about it. My own doctor doesn't really take it too seriously, so I have to go to my specialist to get listened to. Yeah, that's it in a nutshell.
That's. I mean, that sounds excruciating. To be honest, it sounds like webbing between your organs. What kind of sensation is it? What the pain itself? What's it like?
Um, It's horrible. So it can lead to disability, and there's been times where I'm in a wheelchair, or other times where I've just not been able to get out of bed. Through every effort of trying, I can't sit upright. So it's ended up with my partner, my fiance now. God love him. He's been amazing because he's been my best friend all my life. So he's seen me go through the stages and knew full well what he's getting himself into. And although I never expect it, there's been times where he's had to get me out of bed, and he's had to really like help dress me and help, just do daily things that we take for granted. But like, sorry, but it's now like walking people most days. Yeah.
And what's the pain like? Have they formed some kind of way to not to treat it, but to manage it?
Yeah, they have. So I said there isn't a cure, but there's treatments. I've tried like contraceptive pills and injections, and had 2 or 3 of them on the go at the same time. So a lot of hormones really to treat it. But they helped for maybe a week or two, and then didn't. So as I worked through all these painkillers that they prescribed, they kept giving me Oromorph and morphine injections, and I'd have to be picked up off the street by the neighbours and an ambulance with laughing gas to get me actually be able to move. So now they've resorted to, I had chemotherapy for a year last year. Trying to think of the dates that we're on right now. So while I was doing my masters, I was on chemo for pretty much that full year and a little bit longer than I was supposed to be on.
And that's, I'm assuming, just an attempt to kill off that tissue.
Yeah, it's to stop the production of estrogen, because if you're on certain chemotherapy drugs, then it stops your production of estrogen. It puts you into early menopause. It's not the radiation, so you don't get the hair loss, although you get hair thinning. But it essentially just, it puts it on a halt and lets your body try and fight it a little bit and destroys some of the cells. Yeah.
Incredible. I mean, it's like hearing what you said in the first section or half of this, talking about all the things you were able to do and achieve, and then knowing afterwards that that's what you're experiencing the whole time. That's the bit. When I found that out, I was like, holy shit, this is, that's incredible story. How come, I mean, what do you think? How did you cope with the pain? I mean, a lot of people wouldn't be able to cope with that pain for a start. How did that even happen? Or what's your thoughts on all that?
I don't know. I think I just did. I can't really explain it. I've always had the mindset that I am a bit of a weakling, because as I said, because the doctors didn't take it seriously, and my mum. But then we realised she used to compare me to my auntie, and be like, "Oh, you're just like your auntie Bernie. She used to always whinge about this kind of pain, but everyone goes through it." Anyway, my auntie Bernie had the same condition as me.
Oh,
so.
well,
Yeah,
God love her.
The standing joke in our family that that's just the way my mum is. So, but it helped, I think, because I think if she had run around too much for me, I mean, she's unbelievably supportive. But if she'd have been almost too sympathetic and empathetic, I would have followed. I would have let it define me or be the thing that stops me from doing something, or the excuse. Because I said I'm a lazy get outside of work, so but yeah, so I think that's really helped in a way, because I believed that that it was just me, that I could get through it. Everyone has this, it's normal, which shows the power of the mind, I suppose. But yeah.
And I mean, since finding out that not everybody has this excruciating pain every day, and you're kind of the only one, or the one of few, how has that changed things for you? Has that verified you? Has it made you do less? Has it made you do more?
I'd like to say it's maybe, but it probably hasn't, just physically. So I give myself a break now. I don't beat myself up as much if I can't do certain things. Whereas I used to get frustrated and wonder why I wasn't able to be consistent. So my training, like especially with the weightlifting, some days I'd come in and I'd be lifting quite a lot or close to my body weight or more, and I managed to get it overhead and it felt brilliant. And then the next day I didn't have any aches or pains from the lifting, but for some reason the bar hurt to pick up off the floor, just an empty bar. And I couldn't wrap my head around, why can other people carry on training? And all this science said I know we're not linear, but there should be some kind of growth here, but it just didn't seem to. It kind of looped back round. I've just accepted that now though. So I try, sometimes successfully, quite a bit not. And at the moment I'm very much at the lower end after the chemo, because that really just weakened me. I really struggled. Like my bones were really weak and achy. So yeah, that's a bit of a challenge at the moment, but yeah.
Jesus. And I mean, not to take it too far, but do you know the kind of long-term effects of this, or how this ends up, or?
Yeah, so I mean, I'm really fortunate. There's a lot of chronic illnesses that have more devastating effects. I'm going to have pain, probably for the rest of my life. Menopause might be a relief when I go back into that. I can't have children. It's one of the leading causes of infertility.
Right.
And the disease itself is actually really common, which is what makes it shocking how the doctor dealt with it, because it's 10% to up to 20% with some.
Really? This is quite a common experience.
Yeah, but every experience is slightly different. So some people can have it and have a lot of it and not even know until one day they start to get the pain and they're operated on quickly, because they tend to think it's appendicitis sometimes. And yeah, so it's a bit of a weird one, but I know that my reproductive organs are pretty buggered from it all. So yeah, that's yeah.
I'm getting real deep on you now altogether. Apologies if it's uncomfortable.
I think you've got to be open. There's a lot of people going through it, so I probably annoy people on my Facebook because I'll put awareness campaigns on there, but I think I'd never heard of it before.
Mm-hmm.
A nurse mentioned it at a clinic I was at, because they were trying to solve pain thinking it's appendicitis, and it wasn't, so they were just going through different things, and she suggested that, and once I heard that, every symptom seemed to link back to that.
Mm-hmm. I mean, I'd never heard of it myself. I think it's insane that it's such a widespread problem and then not really, managed very well. So I guess that's probably the case with quite a number of conditions. I think the NHS is probably overrun at the minute with general, probably more than anything, mental health. I would say. But then it's very hard to distinguish between that, because people, a lot of people who have like depression tend to, feel physical pain from it, and they can't differentiate between physical and emotional pain. So I've heard anyway.
Yeah, no, that's absolutely correct. So that's another reason why it was dismissed for a while, because I had depression and was on medication for that for a short while, but I preferred to try and manage mine without. But I also had PTSD, so they started to think that some of it was down to anxieties and things like that. So yeah, there's a lot of reasons why it got ignored in my case, but it's very common and it's worldwide. This is happening. It's not just the UK. It's education and research that need to be there first and foremost, which the doctors can know about if the research isn't there. So
it's true. And you mentioned about depression and anxiety and so on. Is that direct result of the bullying and stuff from earlier on, or how did that come about?
I think so. Yes, I've always been quite, I'd say, an emotional person. So if my friends are upset, I'm upset. I'm very much in that frame of mind, and when I'm feeling low, it's quite hard to get out of it. But that got worse as the bullying happened, and then it got to a point where I didn't recognize my own feelings. So I was feeling a certain way even when things were going amazing. So I had all these experiences going on. I had my friends that were lovely, my family were all doing really well, my partner, and yet I'm still feeling this lack of motivation, this also, it's like despair and feeling like I shouldn't be there. It's a really bizarre,
Oh,
I just
I know that one. I've had my run-ins with that as well. I know exactly the type of thing you're talking about. Everything can seem like it's going like a dream on the outside, but it's like in a way it's an addiction to a certain thought process.
yeah.
It's like you can't get rid of it. It's like that thing you just can't get rid of. Weird, a weird thing. But I mean, you can, I hope that has it improved? Have things improved for you? Is it gone, or is it still there, or is it something?
It's still there, but like I think my mother's attitude again has kind of helped with that. Um, but I have got a good support network. I'm joking about my mother here, but she's because we're really close, but she is supportive, and I'm close to my brother, I'm close to my father, and my father obviously, and I've got a lot of close friends as well that I've had from being a young child. So I've got that consistency of they know when I'm struggling and they know how to approach that as well. So it's not a case of ignoring it, but they won't be just asking me questions constantly. They're allowing me to
Yeah,
feel that way. And I think that's sometimes the best thing. Like
yeah.
I know I'm feeling that way, so I've got my own mechanisms of coping that
It's
work
often
for me.
overlooked as well, isn't it? It's often overlooked that that first step is just acceptance.
Yeah.
If it's like, what is it, the AA? What is it,
Yeah.
12 rules or something? 12 steps process. The first step is to acknowledge that there's a problem. And I think a lot of times we deny it so much that you
Yeah.
can't, if you aren't even honest with yourself about it, then or don't recognize it for what it is.
Yeah.
Um, it's funny. It's like it's almost like a filter on your brain, isn't it? Where you filter out so much of the good stuff, and then you only filter in the bad stuff. So no matter how
Yeah.
many good things are happening to you objectively, you can't see it.
Yeah, and it's hard to explain to people that haven't been through it, or especially when it's clinical, not
Mm-hmm.
to take away from anyone that's suffering with
No, no,
depression or depressive states. But when it's like this has been here all the time. There's never been.
it's never been anything else.
Yeah.
In my case, that'd be very different. Mine was, generally it wouldn't have been like that. It would have been, there's two spells really that I can remember. One lasted probably about 4 or 5 weeks, and the other probably up to a year. Although the one that lasted a year, I'd gotten so used to it that I didn't realize it.
Yeah, but it alters your brain chemistry, doesn't it? And there's it's like a continuous cycle. You just get trapped in, and it's that wallowing again. But it's just very hard to explain to people that haven't been through that or felt that way, because often it's kind of I'll just get over it. And whilst some people might benefit from hearing that once in a while, when you know that you should be feeling maybe more motivated, maybe you should be more grateful. And it's not that you don't have those thoughts, you just can't react that same way that you want to. And it's almost like you don't recognize yourself sometimes. It's very bizarre. Um, that's my experience anyway. And it might sound very disjointed. I've just got used to analyzing what I'm feeling. And yeah, work with
Well,
professionals.
it's funny because what's on the outside, I guess, for you isn't reflective of that, and not having to deal with those problems. So, I mean, you had the endometriosis, and then on top of that, depression to deal with, and you've managed to achieve pretty damn a lot, pretty damn well, I guess, in your life. You've gotten to positions and to do things that many people don't do. You've had many physical pursuits, which is very hard with both those conditions. So, what's what's the trick? How do you how do you keep going when all that's kicking your ass every day?
I don't know.
Well,
Um,
it's like the reason I go into this is because I think it's such a common, probably more so the type of that I got. I don't really understand it that much myself, but the type that I got, I guess, is temporary thing. And I've heard many reports of people saying where it's not a temporary thing. I know many people that, you know, have been clinically diagnosed and they're saying it's something that's not temporary. I don't know how much that's beneficial. I think that possibly having that belief sometimes can kind of eliminate hope in some people. Obviously, it's not done it in your case,
Yeah.
but I think it's really important to balance acceptance of it and hope to get past it as well, I guess.
Yeah, I think it's like there's a big debate as well, and you'll see it a lot on social media at the moment, and people arguing backwards and forwards about who's going through it and nothing can fix it. I think sometimes we've got to recognize what can help it.
Mm-hmm.
Although it might fix it, things like your physical activity, eating well, just generally giving yourself some, and I'm terrible for this, but giving yourself some time just to breathe and not do anything, being outdoors, you know, things like that actually do help, and there's a lot of research behind them that show that they do help with things like depression and other mental ill health. It's not saying it's a cure and it's not to undermine, but if you're not doing those things either, it's going to make that whole perspective of yours so much worse.
That's an interesting word. I mean, we talk about it a hell of a lot here in regards to the mindset approach that we use. I think it is a lot of it's down to perspective, and if you can make that switch, that certainly would help me. If I hadn't done that, if I had kept looking at things the way I was looking at them, then it would have not ended very well both times. But you know, when you do kind of change your angle of view, sometimes everything else, you know, what you're looking at changes. The old saying.
Yeah. Even if it's temporary switch off the mind, or just some temporary, like, I don't know, not a false happiness, but just having that moment to kind of be like, okay, it's going to be better. You know, there's things like this, you know, whether it's the hobby that you're doing, the people that you're around, you know, sometimes you have to do the things that you don't really want to do and be, you know, to get through it as well.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of misunderstanding around that. A lot of people I've worked with have said, you know, I don't want to do that, and I just say, look, do it anyway. And they say, I don't want to do it anyway, and I say, just trust me. And you have to almost like, you have to kind of use that trust, the trust card, I guess.
Yeah.
And it's hard to use that trust card because if you fail, then they fail, and that's tough. You know, that's really, really hard. So you have to make sure that you're right whenever you pull that trust card out. You have to know that what the answer is going to be, because they have to experience what you expect them to and what they expect to from it. Otherwise, it's very, very difficult. So I don't use it that often. But when when you have to pull that out and say, look, just trust me in this process, it does. And I spoke briefly. I don't know if you've watched Caroline's podcast, but we spoke briefly on it then. The whole idea of putting your trust in another person and just kind of saying, right, okay, I'll do whatever it is you're asking me to do. I'm not saying it's going to work, but I'm going to try. I think that can help for people, you know, just to have someone there to, you know, it depends. I guess it all depends on the circumstances for everyone. But yeah, it seems to help in a way.
Yeah, I think when people are suffering with mental ill health, they're feeling things very deeply. And it can sometimes work in your favor in that way. If you have a friend that's going through that and they do trust you, it's almost that sense of obligation of, okay, look, I need this as well, so come with me and give this a try.
Exactly.
And sometimes they'll do it not for themselves, although it might be benefiting, but they'll do it for a friend.
Exactly. Yeah, it's no, that's pretty much it. You pretty much nailed it. I was trying to say it there, but you can't say it any better than that. I think you're bang on the money. You're using that kind of leverage, I guess, you have as a friend and as someone they trust and care about to help them through theirs. You know.
Yeah.
So that's cool. What about what's next? What are you thinking of doing? What's your next project? What are you working on at the minute? Actually, what projects are you working on now?
Few things really. Obviously, I'm still teaching, although it's marking now. All my assignments are in from my students. Um, so alongside that, I'm still doing work for British weightlifting, and that's really fun. I love that job. And that's teaching their coaching courses. I'm hoping to start my PhD in October, as long as the details can get narrowed down and the go ahead happens. And I'm doing some work with Women Climb, and
Cool.
that's just happened in the past week or two. But I really like the community that they've got, and it's non-profit, but it's essentially getting people, or getting women into climbing that maybe have never tried it before, some that have but don't have friends that are into the same thing. And it's a really nice community, so they do a lot of things online, for members and for the public. And yeah, it's a really nice initiative to be a part of, really.
Cool. And I mean, stuff like that's going to have a massive impact. The types of clubs and societies and things that we have together, like these kind of communities that we have. I think they're massive, have a massively positive impact on things like mental health.
Yeah,
So,
I think they've got psychologists as well that do like me. They write a lot of content. They do videos of support for people. Um, yeah, and it works really well, because then they go along to the climbing meets. Obviously, it'll be after lockdown now and before lockdown, but they'd go and they'd actually support people. So if people are getting fearful, or maybe just anxious because they're in a group setting suddenly, having those specialists there can really help. And it's not they're not there for money, because they're not being paid. It's just they're there to be part of a community that's doing a lot of good. So it's really nice. It's just really nice to be part of. I can't really explain it, but it's fun.
and how are you getting on during this whole epidemic, the coronavirus? How has it been? How has it impacted you, your training, your life general? How's it been?
Training, pretty much the same. I'm still training most days in my back garden, or in the house, because I've managed to get hold of some extra weights, and I brought weights back from work that were mine anyway, being stored there and used, by some of the staff members. So that's been all right. Work's more time consuming than it was beforehand, which was a shock.
How's it?
Um, yeah, because students are needing that extra support, because it's so uncertain for them. Um, and I can't go into detail, but the area that I'm in and the students that we get, if you think I've had anywhere near a bad time or a challenge, they've had 10 times worse. So the students that we are working with, a lot of them are mature students, and it's just looking at supporting them with the technology that they're using, and being able to take in information digitally rather than face to face, and being able to stay focused when they've got kids screaming in the background that they're trying to homeschool at the same time. So that's been an added challenge, and there's a lot of, we're using Microsoft Teams, so there's a lot of like calls that we're doing over there to the groups. And even sometimes we shouldn't really be doing this, but even I've had students call me at silly o'clock, and some of them they need that pastoral support, so it ends up with us as tutors giving that support there. So yeah.
I know. I mean, I know already from knowing you from the time that I have, that I'm sure that's no regrets to you. It's something that you're glad to do in a way.
Yeah.
It must be. I mean, obviously it'll be hard, no doubt. It's going to have its effect, and it's going to take its toll on you. But I know that that's something you'd be interested, that you wanted to do anyway, or would want to do. How does it feel to come full circle and like be the one teaching mature students who maybe also have a lot of more things going on, maybe like you did as well?
Kind of weird. Yeah, I still get imposter syndrome. I mean, it's been almost 3 years now that I've been doing it, because I started when I was actually doing my undergrad. I got asked to go in and do guest lectures, which was weird. But they really liked them. It worked well. I was able to get across the right learning outcomes and support their assessments. And then I got a permanent job once I graduated. And yeah, I still feel like I shouldn't be there sometimes. It's really bizarre. Um, but I suppose a lot of people do, don't they? It's a really strange thing. I never saw myself as being a teacher at that level. Um,
How do you get past that thought then? How do you get past that kind of I guess that limiting belief or whatever it is you want to call it? I don't know. How do you keep going on and just doing your work if that's what you're thinking?
no idea. Just turn up, turn up
Go
and
up,
try
beat it. Yeah. I
my
mean,
best.
what I guess it's kind of like a contradiction of terms in a way because you've gone to the trouble of applying for it, applying for those positions, doing your damnedest to get into them, I'm sure. And then you get there and you think, oh dear, I shouldn't be here. But then
Yeah,
still do a great job otherwise, or anyways, I guess. So, I mean, is there any sense to that? There's no point even looking for sense in that.
there's not much sense to what I do. But yeah, I don't know. I think it's because how I came into it was I didn't apply. I got contacted via social
Oh,
media,
right. Oh, right.
and it come in and do a talk, and then a talk turned into 8, and then yeah, so it turned into like a practical, then followed by a lecture, then a practical, then a lecture, then a practical, then a lecture. And then I came in and did some support stuff, and a lot of it was like learn from my mistakes, look at what I did during my research project, don't want to do that. And talking about challenges being a mature student to writing. So, and it just seemed to work really well with the students. And then when I applied, again, I didn't expect to get it, but I had the hope that because I'd been there before in that institution, um, that there might be a
But
chance.
I guess it's the desire to do it. Although you didn't see yourself as potentially becoming that teacher, you did want it. You did
Yeah.
want to do the position. That's cool.
Yeah.
And what made you want it? What gave you that desire to be doing that kind of work?
I think it was partly the feedback that I got back from students, and the tutor that had brought me in as well. And that kind of drove me a lot, thinking, okay, actually, I'm good at this. I can do this. Um, why have I not thought of this before? And yeah, and I never thought about teaching in that sense, but I suppose a lot of coaching crosses over
Yeah,
because you have to differentiate. You have to learn how to communicate with people, and you have to be able to get past your own perspective and put that across to someone on what is going to be best for them.
yeah.
So I think it just crossed over a lot of the skills that were picked up from doing the jobs I've done and the studying that I've done. It just worked really well. So yeah.
You feel like teaching the kids before whenever you were 18, you feel like that's helped you teach adults?
Yeah, I mean, I love being around kids. I love teaching kids. Um, and I always wanted to teach children, not adults, which is weird. So when I did my dance teaching, it was like, yeah, I'll teach children because I wanted them to have the experience I had of dancing as a child. And then suddenly I've merged into this. Actually, no, I prefer teaching adults, so I've got more patience now. So I think it just changed. But again, I think it's proved to people that whatever you set out to do at the beginning, you might not end up there. You might end up somewhere different, or you might end up there and then go somewhere different. So it's not always a straightforward path. There's all different opportunities that you might not even think of. And yeah.
That seems to be a bit of I guess, a mark of your story is you've taken on so many opportunities. Do you ever turn down an opportunity? Have you had opportunities and said no? Because it seems like you've just said yes to everything that's come along in a good way. In a good way, it's
I
amazing.
have, but I get this real, if I don't do it, I might not have this opportunity again. So I obviously weigh it up, and I'm a bit more sensible now. So I look at how is it going to impact my life with my fella? How is it going to impact my well-being, time-wise as well? And obviously my main job, lecturing, that's my priority. So I don't want anything that's going to take me away from that job, because otherwise I'm just spreading myself too thin, doing a lot
Yeah.
of jobs really poorly. So as long as I can still do my lecturing and all the stuff that's associated with that, then I'll try and take it on. But yeah.
Super. And I'll go back to the question that I tried to ask and then changed my mind. What about what's next? So you've got your projects you've got on now. Do you have any kind of idea where you're going to be in 5-10 years, or is that just open for?
It's open. It's quite open. Is I said I'm trying to do my PhD and start that soon in climbing. Because after doing my master's project, I realised stick with something I'm really interested in. Because for some reason, I went down the football route on my master's research, and it's not my interest. And it was very apparent on the paper it was not my interest. It was. I by the end of it, it was like pulling teeth trying to get me to finish things off. My concentration wasn't there.
Mm-hmm.
Memory's not. I've not got the best memory anyway. I've got short-term memory loss from the chemo and other medications. So I think stick with something that I'm interested in, because even though I might forget it or be stuck for time, I'll be motivated.
Back easier,
yeah. So that's my next one. And I want to immigrate as well to Canada.
That's a big one.
Yeah, that's
a pretty big one. You actually mentioned in one of my posts, I remember I posted a few questions up on Facebook. You actually mentioned about taking a trip around, was it the Antarctic?
Yeah. Oh, I'd love to do that, but it costs so much. My great uncle, I have to get this right. He was Ernie Shackleton, so he was an explorer of the Antarctica, and I've sort of grown up knowing that knowledge that he was one of my ancestors, and we've got the family tree here with it all in, and it just made me fascinated with traveling. So when people look at my CV or even just look at generally what I'm doing, I live for my holidays, my traveling, and I like to explore, and I like to go to places that are away from the crowds a little bit. And yeah, it's just like a little escape for me. And Canada can kind of blend that, I suppose, in my head.
Yeah, Canada, you can pretty much live in an escape.
Yeah.
What's the plan? What's the plan in Canada? Are you going to buy land, or what's the story?
Yeah, so we bought land the other week.
Amazing, well done, congratulations.
Yeah. It was during lockdown. I don't drink often, but I had a drink and started trying to bid on lots of pieces of land over there, which is mental. I don't even know what I was thinking. But we've had it in our head that we want to go there. We went and checked it out last year. Absolutely loved it. We're looking at New Brunswick or Nova Scotia to get ourselves on the property or land market because it was cheaper over there. And then one of them, the one that I bid on and actually put a proper bid in, came back as rejected because someone outbid me, thankfully. But one of the others came back that I'd inquired about while tipsy and said, look, we've got this one, but we've also got 2 other plots of land that might make more sense for space and money. And we spent a couple of days mulling it over and then accepted it and put our down payment down. And now we have a mortgage on 2.8 acres of land.
Amazing. Wow. That's class. Yeah. And have you been saving up for that for a long time, I guess?
No, not really.
No.
We were supposed to be getting married, so it's essentially because our wedding is being postponed, and because we're quite savvy with our money for holidays anyway, and had stuff for the honeymoon and whatnot, I just was like, well, should we do this instead? And push our wedding back anyway because we have to. So yeah.
Yeah, it's not a bad idea. I mean, I don't know. I think a wedding is, you get a couple of days, but now you've actually got a piece of land. It's like there's potential dream stuff there,
Luckily, our wedding's quite cheap anyway. So, but yeah, it's just things like we'd save money for a big holiday afterwards and stuff. But
yeah, for like a product. It's funny because one of the things I really want to do is to buy some woodland. I want my own forest. I've wanted, like, honestly, I've wanted it from like a long time. I wanted it probably since I was a kid, if I'm honest with myself. But
Yeah.
yeah, but it's become more and more apparent over the last number of years. Me and Ash went away to a place in York actually, and it was like log cabins right beside a woodland, and I thought this is what life should be like. This is the life for me.
Yeah.
So hopefully, apparently I've looked into it in the UK and Ireland, um, and apparently you're not really able to buy and then build a house on your woodland, which is a bit fucking annoying.
Yeah.
Is that the same in Canada?
No, no. The land that we've got, it's got status, so we're allowed to build a cabin or something like that on it, which is fine. And we're also allowed, it's got electric going to it and a phone line already. It's just not got water. So get that sorted. But we've already got a bit of an idea of what as I said, I get really like passionate about things. In my spare time, past and kind of looking at what we can do with it. So yeah.
That's class. I'm actually really excited for you. I don't know if you can tell. I'm really, really excited. I would love to have something like that. It's definitely something that I've set myself a goal for by the time I'm 35 to have that sorted in the forest. So God knows how that'll go, but definitely in the pipeline. That's inspired me a bit more though. So to know you've done it, it's cool.
Well, there's a lot of places that don't have restrictions, so you can buy as long as you're not putting a big, ugly building on it, like a condo or something. Then there's a lot of places like in Canada and countries that aren't as densely populated. They've got a lot of areas that want to just get more people in there anyway, even for holiday homes. So they'll allow you to have your own piece of land and quite a substantial piece as well.
Yeah, sounds like it. Fantastic. Well, is there anything you want to add to it, or anything you want to add? Because that was great. Enjoyed that.
No, I feel like I've babbled on. Sorry.
No, not at all. No, that's been fantastic. Really enjoyed that conversation. I mean, that's the idea. The whole idea behind this podcast altogether was kind of to show, I guess, local heroes. I found out when I opened the gym that there's a lot of cool stories around. People have really intense stories. Have been through a lot of shit, and not we don't really need to look to famous stars or anything like that for motivation or inspiration or for I guess I don't know, but we don't need to look outside for that. There's people there's people with a lot that are kind of unsung heroes that have a lot to share and a lot to add and a lot of value to give, but don't get the platform. And I was hoping to do that, so I'm glad to have you on.
Thank you.
We'll end it there. Thanks very much, Nicole. Really, really appreciate it.
Yeah, you're welcome. Talking. I'll speak soon.
Speak soon.